finished. So Cassie, JJ, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mandy. Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. I was very delightful when Mandy asked Cassie and me to talk a little bit about maintaining optimal health situation awareness, and that's what we'll begin this morning. Cassie and I will share about 15 slides. I'll take the first half, and she'll take the anchor and run it in for us home. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Next slide, please.
Oh boy, now we get the real test. And
Thank
for,
you.
here, let me see to JJ. For some reason, when I can't seem to make you big.
That's okay. I'm good with being small. It's all right.
Okay.
I'm exactly fine where I am.
Okay. We'll see how this goes.
Right.
It's a learning process. Okay, go for it.
Perfect. So just a little bit of background information. So even before the coronavirus happened, anxiety and depression were very ubiquitous and prevalent, not only in our communities here locally in Wyoming, but also nationwide. So in the state of Wyoming, unfortunately, we probably have the highest rate of suicide per capita in the adolescent and youth population. That's a very alarming and staggering statistic. We're always in the top 3 or 4 states nationwide also for the highest suicide rate per capita. We always are competing with Alaska, Montana, Idaho, Montana, and the other states. So that is kind of just a baseline before all of this started happening. And last year, the American Psychological Association really showed us that up to a quarter of us have to choose between getting treatment for mental illness and also having to pay for our daily necessities such as groceries, gas, food, all these important things. And with the COVID-19 thing happening right now, we are in unprecedented times where we have fear of literally the unknown. Next slide, please.
Okay, JJ, I'm going to stop the share because now I've got like more windows than we can do in one given place. So I think what I will do is just share, well, okay, let me try again. And okay, go for it.
Awesome, thank you. Next slide, please. So we know already, even before the COVID-19 situation, there were not enough of mental health providers such as Cassie and myself to begin with. We have one of the fewest, I think, providers to patient population here locally in Wyoming. Some communities in Wyoming are better served in terms of mental health than others. I feel very, very fortunate in Cheyenne that we have a pretty decent system. Casper, I think, has a decent system, but many other outlying kind of smaller communities may have a harder time. For example, when my wife and I were first interviewing for jobs, we were given interviews in Rock Springs, which I think has one of the kind of lowest provider ratios, and I'll let Cassie speak more to that later on. We also interviewed, or we tried to get an interview in Jackson. Obviously, that is less of a kind of needy area, especially I think with opportunities for across the state or telehealth and things like that are trying to become more and more of utility in these times. So Cassie and I wanted to share with you this morning about opportunities that we can lead within this arena. You know, given the lack of enough kind of mental health infrastructure and supports, how can we, being graduates of Leadership Wyoming, help out and model what things can we help in terms of building networks and community? And so that's something that we wanted to highlight on this morning. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the first thing that I want to kind of encourage individuals to do is to maintain some kind of semblance of a routine. You know, there are some things that we start out with in our days that are sacrosanct, and that I would include the most holy of holies of a cup of coffee in the morning, things that we know will be essential to making the rest of the day smooth sailing and perfect. And I want to encourage you not to give up those things. These are things that we can really, really control. These are things that we can really, really cause ourselves to be as happy as we can be. I would recommend trying to dress for success at home, even during video calls. You'd be happy to know I put on a nice collared shirt for you all this morning instead of wearing a tank top or something else, at least from the top up. So you can do whatever, Daffy Duck or Donald Duck style camera, but it's up to you. But just have fun with that, because like literally, you know, this is something that we do have control over. People can see your background. You can set a nice little palm tree or something in the background and with beach and waves and stuff if you want to. One of the most important things I also think really needs to be said right up the front. And I think we're very, very fortunate that we do live in Wyoming because we have the opportunity to go outside. We are very, very fortunate that Governor Gordon has also not issued a strict shelter-in-place order. I know the medical community had recommended and advocated that we do so, but I'm very, very grateful that Governor Gordon did not, because it allowed me and my wife to go to Kurt Gowdy, a couple times last week when the weather was really, really good before it started snowing again. We have a couple inches this morning. I'll have to like shovel out the driveway after this meeting at some point. So I would encourage you to try to just go outside, breathe the fresh air. We are so fortunate that we can do this from Wyoming instead of somewhere else, like the confines of New York City, the confines of Seattle, something really, really kind of hustle and bustle. So we're very, very fortunate. I think we have a lot of opportunity, therefore, to kind of stay connected using technology such as Zoom to make sure that we're keeping a good eye on our family and friends. That does include all Leadership Wyoming alum as well. So I think that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. I encourage you to do more kind of reaching out to your friends and family as we ordinarily do. I think this time is more crucial than ever to try to allow people to stay connected. The connection is vital. The connection is what makes us humans. I always joke with my wife now, it seems like we're all kind of traveling on separate spaceships on a journey to a different planet because we're really not able to kind of spend a lot of time with other people. But on a spaceship journey, you're still going to have to kind of keep in touch with people. And with Zoom and technology, it's actually very, very efficient to be able to do that. And so it is what it is now. It's very, very temporary, I believe. We have to maintain good kind of physiologic health. I encourage you to drink as much water or whatever favorite cocktail, alcoholic or not, beverage of choice, as early as you want.
Within moderation, don't drink and drive, thanks.
Yes, exactly. Within moderation, absolutely. So the good things about taking care of ourselves is continuing doing all those good things, and we'll still kind of continue to feel happy as the way that we were. Anything that we need to do reasonably to stimulate our flow of dopamine and wellness, I think is very, very important. There is a lot of information going on right now, both in Facebook and other sources. Some news sources are more reputable than others. So I encourage you to kind of decide what that is for yourself, and kind of also, if it's too overwhelming, just to take a little break. You can take a few hours, take a day or two, take a week or two, and just kind of relax and not worry as much about everything that's going on right in the moment, because that can absolutely overwhelm anyone. So I think that's really, really key. At the current time, personal well-being should be the most important thing, not on the back burner, not as an afterthought. And the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is keep on trying to do all the things that we truly love to do. For people who love to be at home, for people who love to enjoy the indoors, obviously we have as much time as we want to do that, but also to do any projects that you want as well. Next slide, please. So the most important concept I think I want to hammer home, and Cassie can talk more about this as well later, is the meaning and purpose and the vision kind of behind social distancing. So I think a really, really better approach to kind of conceptualize this is to call it physical distancing in social solidarity. So what this really, really means is, it's painful to have to socially distance from other people, but in realizing that can actually keep the majority of us healthy and safe and alive, I think that is kind of the ultimate meaning behind what we're trying to do. Physical distancing seems like, we're trying to be standoffish, we're trying to be aloof, we're trying to kind of maintain borders and kind of, maintain walls and stuff. And I don't think it's really, really about that. I think what it's really, really about is allowing us to kind of keep each other kind of in company by trying to keep each other safe. I probably know this more than anyone else because of the unique patient populations that I serve. At some point, the majority of people coming to my behavioral health unit will be those who come from our homeless shelter and stuff like that. And so there's going to be at some point a pretty high chance that someone comes in with a positive COVID-19 test. And what we have to do is kind of realize that, by my being a healthcare worker, my goal is to keep everyone else safe instead of having to put everyone else at risk. And so I've been very kind of proactive about that, where I'm very, very paranoid about, even trying to meet up, in any semblance or form, or going to the grocery store. And I pretty much wear like either an N95 or some kind of mask on me pretty much all the time when I'm outside the house, just to make sure I'm not going to breathe any particles on other people, as I could be one of the 80% of people who are completely asymptomatic and not even know it because we don't have adequate testing right now to determine that. So it's very powerful and powerlessness, and a lot of potential powerlessness to be able to do this physical distancing and social solidarity thing. This is like the first time, I think, in our nation's history, maybe in the history of the world, that we've ever been asked to do something like this. So it's a very new experience for us all. It's very, very new to me. Obviously, as you guys know, I'm more of a extroverted human being. I like to, mingle and be around other people. It's very, very difficult for me to kind of be at home by myself. You would have no idea the amount of organization I've had, including, being able to get my office in order, like all the drawers, every single kind of place in the house, minus the garage, because I'm waiting for it to get warmer, to do all the cleaning that I've ever wanted to do in my life. I think I should be good for decades after this. I encourage you guys to find, some kind of project or something interesting or something you believe is purposeful in terms of an activity that you can do now that you don't ever have to do again for the rest of your life. One of the things that you can continue to do if you like it is to practice daily mindful meditation, yoga. I call it the expressive arts because that can include, mild, moderate, or severe cases of profanity if you so choose. And so there are ways that you can kind of just enjoy using whatever coping mechanism is most helpful and healthy. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. As I said before, and I'll reiterate again, personal well-being right now, I think, is central more than ever before. Next slide, please.
Okay, I just have to comment that only JJ can get away with putting drink water and drink cocktails in the same bullet and practice mindfulness yoga and cussing in the same bullet. So, this is really a unique leader here. Not everyone can get away with that.
Thank you. That's too kind.
Oh, that's a good segue.
That's right, exactly. And so we have to not take ourselves seriously all the time. When I was younger in my life, I thought I probably just took myself way too seriously. I always give a story of my piano teacher telling me when I'm in front of the piano, my back was just too stiff. I got to just relax a little bit, not just be like, very, very stiff. And so for my whole life, I think my coping mechanism has just to basically take myself and take my life a little bit less seriously. So I think it's done some good things for me as well, because it's taken deliberate, concerted effort. I think we're giving a lot of opportunities for us to learn new coping strategies as well. We know all about humor and how helpful that can be. For a lot of us, I think humor is a really, really good coping mechanism. Leadership Wyoming obviously has taught us not only humor, but also sublimation and altruism. Sublimation is basically to take a situation which is less than ideal and allow that situation to flourish and allow you to see a situation in a better way, so that you can make the most out of it, basically. And then altruism, obviously, we do a whole lot of, not only kind of by our leadership development here within the program, and also just to have opportunities to give back to the community. And Cassie will highlight some of that later on in this presentation. In this kind of time frame, we have to really, really reach out for help as often as we need it, to be humble and to realize we may need help. A lot of times, we simply don't ask for help, or we don't know help is available. But I think more than ever, I think we're offering ourselves as a resource to each other. And I think a forum like this, I think, is essential for maintaining the well-being and also optimizing the mood of everyone here and also around us. And I think our sphere of influence is so impactful here in our small state that, if we're happy and healthy, we have the potential to affect, countless number of lives as well around us. And I want everyone to also remember that this is only temporary. We don't know exactly how long the estimates will be in terms of our being able to open up everything again. Some of that depends on how quickly we can get a number of things done. First and foremost, we need to be able to have time to develop not only rapid testing, which I think is becoming a little bit more and more readily available. That's going to be accelerated in terms of technology that's developing, just like computers and stuff are getting smaller and smaller, faster and faster. The testing capabilities for COVID-19 will become better. I believe at some point, universal testing might be a way for us to open our borders and get everything started once again to jumpstart economy. I think that really, really needs to happen. Also, a vaccine really, really needs to be developed. I think we're probably about a year away, maybe, to a very reliable vaccine. So I think what needs to happen is we need to prove that people who already have been positive for COVID-19 are safe and have some kind of immunity, and maybe to consider allowing those individuals to go back into work and to stimulate our jumpstart economy sooner than everyone else, and to protect, I think, especially our elderly and those over age 60, especially. Next slide, please. And I believe that there is an appropriate level for anxiety in all of this. As Cassie and I were preparing this talk, we both noticed that we had some kind of anticipatory excitement and kind of nervous energy for this morning. And that's helpful because it means that we care about what we do. And if we didn't have any anxiety, it means life is just all laissez-faire. We don't really care about what's next, or, there's no motivation to do it well. And I think finding an optimal anxiety level, can't be too low, but it can't be too high. It needs to be just right, just like in the Goldilocks zone for everything I like to say. If we are optimally anxious, it means that we can find that place where we're comfortable, knowing that outcome and events matter. And we have too little anxiety, things start not really mattering. If we have too much anxiety, we can't really function at our peak efficiency. So we need to find a way that we can find the optimal amount of anxiety in the situation. So the idea behind all of that is to stay productive in how we think, how we conceptualize, how we process information, and not to ruminate unnecessarily. In my specialty, we do treat kind of racing thoughts, nightmares, scary things like that. And that can require medication, but it can also require cognitive behavioral therapy and some other processing kind of therapy modalities, which are very, very helpful. We can also try to do a little bit of that on our own as well. It doesn't have to require a mental health provider, but it can also allow us to kind of be very, very kind of proactive in doing that. Again, I think Cassie and I would offer ourselves as resources for anyone who wants to kind of embark on ways to do a little bit of it yourself and not have to rely on a counselor or something like that. But I think if you're able to find a professional counselor to help you, that would be ideal as well. As we said before, feel free to take breaks and change the channel, so to speak. That channel doesn't literally have to be a literal channel, it can be a figurative one as well. Some processes are not going to be productive, and consider revamping a process for something that might be a little bit more helpful and allow you to be kinder to yourself. One of the things that it's allowed me to kind of be a little bit more lighthearted is just to allow myself to embrace myself, give myself a hug every day. It's hard to give other people a hug right now, so why don't you just hug yourself? I think that's a really, really fun activity. Just kind of feel the warmth and the love and the oxytocin. It's easy to do that, right? It makes you feel good, right?
That's how you hug in real life too.
That's how you hug in real life too. So it feels really, really good. With all of those, I'd encourage you to give individuals, friends in your social spheres and circles a benefit of the doubt. People always have good intentions. I would not assume that people have anything less than that. Right now, it's a very, very challenging time for everyone. And so just be mindful of that, and we'll get all through this together. Next slide, please. And there will be, on that note, some more behavioral concerns and issues, especially in children, sometimes in adults such as myself, and to know that we should respond gently and lovingly. I'm lucky in my home, I have the basement pretty much all to myself, and so we have a lot of space that I can just go downstairs and kind of cool off and chill out a little bit if I need to. We have to focus on what allows each other to keep each other safe, to feel well attached as well. And this idea that I think is wonderful for us to know is a concept called radical self-acceptance. And basically what radical self-acceptance is kind of assuming that things need to kind of be at a very optimal state, and for you not to worry too much about judging yourself and to do things that may not be productive in achieving your goal. So basically what that means is to give yourself permission to try your best, knowing that you have to accept everything about yourselves without doubting yourself, without not loving yourself, without question, without blame or pushing back on yourself. Next slide, please. And so I would encourage you to seek deliberately all the things that are good in the world, as opposed to the scary and negative things. We have to help each other in all the ways that we can. And as I said before, control the things that you have every ability to control. I think that control is what is going to allow us to carry through and allow us to become better and better. And as I said, this gives you ample opportunity and time to learn that foreign language you always wanted to learn before we can all go out and travel again like we used to. All the things that you've been waiting to do, read, Love and Peace, read all the books that you have always wanted to, because you'll have time now to take care of yourself. If you want to become a bodybuilder, you have all the time in the world to train right now in your home gym as well. So find that project. Next slide, please.
I finished a sweet donkey quilt I've been working on for 4 years, JJ.
Oh, that's awesome. You were telling me about that earlier. That's awesome. Congratulations. That's fantastic. And the final slide I'll present before handing over the reins to Cassie is this one. So I want to kind of share with everyone the importance of breathing exercises. You know, this is always something I always initially thought, oh, this is kind of cheesy or corny. I just kind of blew it off. But the more I think of it, the more important breathing exercises really becomes. So we know that awareness simply follows the breath. If we close our eyes and just kind of track the way that we inhale and then exhale, you can really kind of sense that energy that's coming in and out. And it's also very fundamentally relaxing and soothing just to close your eyes and take a deep breath every once in a while. And that breath really allows us to fine tune our awareness and even to, you know, kind of consciously shut down our minds just even for a split second. And that allows that calm to kind of permeate even for a split second. And it goes on to kind of affect the rest of our breathing after that moment. One great example I had recently when we were on my behavioral health inpatient unit, a seasoned veteran nurse was in charge of kind of a pretty emergent situation. One of our patients had a seizure, which is actually pretty rare in my unit. Usually we'll have folks who have what we call non-epileptic seizures, or sometimes, which I don't like the term, called pseudo seizures. It's not like the patient has any intention of faking a seizure, but sometimes there are seizure-like activities that happen. That's mostly what we see. But in this case, I didn't know this patient very well. And this patient actually had a bona fide medical seizure. So they were convulsing, generalized kind of tonic-clonic seizures. And it's extremely difficult for the staff because usually, you know, the types of seizures we tend to see are ones that it looks like the patient may be faking the seizure or something. And so people were kind of in a panic. I had to go into the room. You know, we had to administer some pharmacologic treatments to break the seizure and stuff like that. Once this was all over, I was really impressed as we went back to our break room and my nurse said, okay, everyone, so remember, everything is perfectly fine. We're all good. Everything went well. We transferred the patient to the medical side of the building, and everyone, let's just sit here and take a deep, big breath. And that really reset the mood and allowed the rest of the day to be very smooth no matter what happened. And luckily we didn't have another patient seize, but I think taking that kind of time out or break, is very important. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cassie.
Awesome. Thank you, JJ. I also just realized I said you could all put questions in the chat window, and then I proceeded to hide the chat window because it's somehow in the middle. So, and I don't think I can get rid of it per se. So I think I'm going to stop the share here and keep the chat window open. Cassie, do you have the slides that you could share from your screen? I know I'm sort of throwing you in the immediate button here. If you don't, we can go back to that, but
I do, if you tell me how to.
You should be able to just click the green button at the bottom that says share screen, and then it'll give you a chance to select those slides. And then really the video will tell us how the difference in these two functions records, because I have no idea. You all should have an option too up at the top where it says view options, where you can choose to see side-by-side mode, where you can see Cassie presenting as well. So again, lots of experiments here. Give us a wide berth, right, JJ?
Right. Am I doing it? I don't even know.
You are. Yeah. So all you need to do is just hit slideshow and then start. Yep. And then from current slide probably. Yep. And then you. Awesome. Yeah, you should be good to go now.
Thank you. So JJ is cooler than me that he works in a clinical setting, but my only comparison is when I was fresh out of the home, I worked at a bowling alley as my first job as a short order cook. And the little lady that trained me was precious. Her name was Dolly. And one of our first rushes that we got through, I went into panic mode because I didn't have experience doing 20,000 things in a kitchen at one time. And Dolly pulled me to the side, looked me straight in the eye, and she said, just breathe. just breathe, Cassie. This is just right now. Focus on one thing to do and get through it. And almost 20 years later, Dolly's advice is something that I hear in my head whenever I either get anxious or angry. Those are the two situations that she pops up. So I really do second that. If you need a chance, just take some time to breathe, anchor yourself into the earth, see where you are. A crisis really is an opportunity. Whenever we're looking at ourselves as members or alumni of Leadership Wyoming, I really want to kind of do a call to action and say, as leaders, how can we take advantage of this opportunity to optimize what we do in our roles that benefit yourself or your institutions for the rest of time? You know, what can we do to set ourselves up to make it more efficient and more compassionate and more accepting in our institutions and roles for our maybe coworkers, maybe our clients that we serve. In my role as the treatment court coordinator, I have a really funky balance that I have to maintain because my participants in the program are held to really strict standards of community supervision on probation. They're balancing out some pretty significant mental health issues and substance abuse issues. And so whenever we can't have contact or provide consistent urinalysis testing, how do we give them the support remotely to maintain their sobriety and all the work that they've done to get to the point they are, instead of backsliding back into that addictive behavior or, you know, not getting everything they need for their mental health issues? And that's been really hard, but we've been able to, as a program, find new opportunities such as online Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Well, okay, so they get to do that. How do we connect that to what we need to confirm that they're doing it? Well, they've come up with some pretty inventive ways to ensure that they've been participating in these electronic social meetings to promote their connectedness with other people in the recovery community. So I really challenge you guys in all your different roles to try to find ways that you can better support yourselves, your coworkers, and the people you serve with mental health and things like that in mind. As leaders, I know you can do it. That's why you're here. I know you can do it. Use the shift like JJ did to make your environment more functional. That is not one of my areas of strength, as you can see by the clutter behind me. I kind of function from chaos, but I have been able to clean things up and get things in a better position so I don't feel like I'm just floating disconnected in this little isolated bubble in my home whenever I have work I need to do. We've made our communication in my team with the treatment court a little more efficient. That's difficult whenever the majority of your communication is emails. You know, tone is really hard to read. Choose good language, be concise, you know, be direct with what you have to do, all the while considering how your words may be received by somebody else. Practice gratitude. That's so important. Some days it's really, really difficult to find things that we identify that we can be thankful for, especially if you're struggling with something like depression and things like that. It's really, really difficult. One of the things that I've been challenging myself to do is to, before I go to bed, identify one thing that I've learned from the day, whether it was a forced education or something I happened upon. It's helped me kind of reframe in my mind how I function that day, whether it was successfully or unsuccessfully, but it removes some of the perceived personal attacks. Sometimes my head likes to spin it in that way. So I have to say, okay, you learned that in that situation, you could have prepared yourself better, or you could have been more receptive in how you heard that message. You know, I've been really challenging myself to take things from my environment, what I could learn. Staying young and living forever. Isn't that something we all wish we could do? But our actions today can be the opportunities that make our kindness live forever. It will be the thing that's left when we're gone. And that's really, if you're into the Grateful Dead at all, that positive ripple in the water is something that we hope to have in a time of crisis. I love Grateful Dead. Sorry, guys, my Volkswagens are outside.
That's amazing, Cassie.
Anytime somebody graduates from my program, the whole time Ripple's playing in my head. It's ridiculous. And there's nothing like a time like this to kind of put our nose to the grindstone and see what we're made of and sink or swim kind of situations. I've had in our little breakout group, one of our members really brought up something that I found to be wonderfully interesting and appropriate. And it was kind of like a survival's guilt. How do you deal and cope with the survivor's guilt of maybe maintaining your employment when so many people have been laid off, or being able to stay at home safe with your family when other people are having to go out daily into the world as an essential worker? And exposing themselves to that risk. And something that I feel privileged to have been a part of as a part of a QPR master training here in Sublet. Hey, Tricia, she's out there. Is one of our members said, brought up the topic of moral injury. It's not PTSD exactly, you know, that guilt that you live with and carry. It's not an indication that something's wrong or that you did something wrong. It's an indication of a correct response to something that went wrong. An example of that I can give is my brother is an Army veteran and discharged with full, I can't think of the word right now, benefits. You know, he's discharged and gets compensated for that. And one of his biggest things that he carries is that he doesn't have any physical injuries. The majority of his injuries were mental health and that he obtained during his tours. And this moral injury is something he carries with. He doesn't feel that he deserves the privilege to stay at home with his family and be compensated and taken care of it for it when people are missing arms and legs, you know. And that's something I think it isn't quite the same. Not many of us are having amputations done currently, but we're struggling with the shift that we're not functioning the way Americans like to identify as functional in our world, right? We're making those changes. I say challenge that survival's guilt to turn into gratitude. Learn that you earned the position where you at, whatever it may be, and try to make the most of it. That can be difficult, but if you find a way to spin your position into positivity for others, it creates that ripple in the world. And it's that positive, and it moves it from that congestion of the anxiety into a function that does good, that you can control. Rekindle with all the important relationships in your lives. This is really our time to rise and lead others and tune into your resilience. And by doing that, help people realize their resilience and support them into stepping into some zone and function that maybe they never had before. And you can do that by holding out your hand. Participating in a wartime effort is a really positive way to channel your time and energy. That can be something like sewing masks. I like to quilt. I have a sweet Ziggy Stardust cross stitch that I did up there. You know, I like to work with fibers, but I've been knocking out face masks for family members. My sister's a PA in Louisiana. I have a stepsister-in-law in Alaska. I've been making masks and caps for. If that's something you can do, you know, or great things like they're doing in Casper, rounding up extra food for the kids who aren't getting the stability of the food service programs in schools. There's a lot of great things you can do to support your community and to tune in as leaders to boost that morale. You know, and you got to keep yourself well. That's so important. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. Inspiring each other on the front line. JJ mentioned that they've had a lot of great community effort to feed the healthcare providers. I think that's so great. You know, it's like anybody struggling in a time of crisis. Whenever you're going full power all day long, to not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from can be the thing that gives you a little bit of peace and anchoring in the day. So maybe the healthcare workers, maybe law enforcement officers, maybe the 911 dispatchers, you know, there's people across the board that are doing those daily functions. It could be your grocery store workers, you know, anybody that could use a hand up. Maybe try to focus your effort and support them in that. Your way of taking care of others is the key to meaningful efforts. You know, I'm super nerd, Carl Sagan, Grateful Dead. Carl Sagan has a story called The Pale Blue Dot. We're here on this dot together, guys. We're all we have. We have to take care of each other. And I promise you, it'll fill up your coin bank internally whenever you see the good that you do in the world ripple out. It's directly related to how we contribute and take care of others. Find your own lesson. That's going to be different for everybody. And that's part of the wide berth that JJ mentioned earlier. The way I interpret the crisis is a privilege, and the way somebody else interprets the crisis may not be as positive as I can put a spin on it. We have to find support and allow others to lean into us if they need it. And that's really difficult right now with things going on too because of the isolation. So I really want to say, circle back around, check on your people. It's so, so important that you check on your people. And celebrate community. See, Mandy, I love your little unicorn. That was the best thing ever on social media. Throwing your business out there. We have wonderful connectedness across the state. Our state is doing great things that I'm not seeing comparisons in other areas. You know, the community gardens, the drive-by senior citizens meals, Bitter Creek Bob tells you to wash your hands in Sweetwater. You know, Mandy was a unicorn for a day. I kind of think you're a unicorn every day. You just don't wear the uniform.
Yeah, I think I have post-traumatic unicorn disorder after being in that suit for like 22 hours over 2 days.
Massive effort. And it brought a smile to my face and I didn't even see it in person. And then we have great, like the Episcopal Foundation committed $1 million to the relief effort. We have incredibly vibrant and strong communities and connectedness across the state. Find a way to celebrate that locally. You know, that's what's going to keep us tuned in and supportive and moving forward instead of falling stagnant where we are in our isolation. We're in Wyoming, we're used to being isolated in one way or another. You know, whenever I tell my family from Texas, I'm 4 hours from a Target here in Pinedale, they don't know what to make of that. And I laugh and say, it's the best. I love it. And I want it to stay this way. We can make it function for what we know to be how Wyoming is. And we can make it layered up and beautiful. So there are a lot of resources available across the state that I think is really important to share. We can make this available another way, right, Mandy? Share them out.
We can, yeah, we can put it in an email and send it to everyone on the call.
Great, and it varies. You know, in our list, we have some things from like the big, small businesses and large businesses that can help employers find ways to get through the financial strain of the time. We have epidemiology information and how to function in that, workforce information for people dealing with the rising numbers of job loss, all kinds of wonderful things. Another thing I'd like to, domestic violence is something that we're seeing an increase of, and be aware. If you know somebody has a funky situation, point them to some resources. They may not be able to go to the safe house in person for that initial, but there are hotlines across the state that people can get some help from. And that connects to the mental health resources. As JJ mentioned, we're strained. We only have one mental health provider that is CARF certified in the county here in Sublet. And for as widespread as we are, that's really difficult. And then you compile it with bad weather, bad roads, and distance, and maybe being someone who doesn't have reliable transportation, it just amplifies how difficult it can be. There's a lot of great resources that we can make available to people that if they can't get in and see a provider right away, maybe they can contact somebody who has some experience and understanding of where they are in that crisis situation. Things like the National Prevention Hotline. They have a text line on their website. There's a veteran-specific crisis hotline. I think that's so important. Veterans understand veterans, just like the Trevor Project under LGBTQ understands LGBTQ. Sorry, I always get a little messed up on that. You know, they know how to support one another from that perspective of where they are. We have access to a text line for a lot of youth, like JJ mentioned, that are struggling, or young adults. And I found also in my experience with suicide prevention, males have a harder time expressing their crisis verbally, and they may be able to text it to someone a little bit easier. All these resources are really important to put in your back pocket. So if you see somebody struggling, you can say, hey, maybe check this out. And it does good to just reach that hand out and be a spark of lightness in the darkness from somebody else, especially whenever we have a lot of scary changes going on. That's about all I got. I'll kick it over to you, Mandy.
Awesome, Cassie, thank you. We did have a couple of questions come in, and I think this will be a good time to maybe have a little discussion on if other people are doing things that are working, or they feel, okay, this is a step I took and I don't know the outcome, but I think it was the right step to take. But JJ, you may see this question from Dana of what's the right way to reach out when you're concerned about someone, you know, prying too much versus not asking enough to try to be a resource. So what advice do you have, JJ? And then Cassie, if you want to build on it too, of how to reach out.
This question is pure gold. This is a daily struggle for me as a healthcare provider. Obviously, when patients come into my behavioral health inpatient unit, they've either already been involuntarily detained or committed. They may or may not want help. And so I think that's always a struggle, is at what stage do we intervene, knowing that patients, individuals, our family, our friends have a right to try to find their own place and to reach out when they believe that they are in a position to reach out. I don't like the idea of forcing anyone to go into treatment or anything like that. Although when I do have appropriate concern, that could be for trying to prevent someone from having thoughts about wanting to self-harm or to end their own lives, or God forbid, or end up in a worse situation than they're already in. The way I see it is from a place of unconditional love. What would you want someone else to do for you if you were in that situation? It's very, very difficult to assume anything about where individuals who you think might be struggling are going through and what we have to do to help out. I would take it from a place of, kind of neutrality and kind of unconditional love, and just see if that is a good approach. A lot of folks don't know what resources are. A lot of folks may never have had treatment for either mental illness or anything. In this day and age, I think a lot of normal anxiety and normal depression is going to happen because of COVID-19 times. When COVID-19 is over, I don't know if a lot of us will not have PTSD over all of this. And I think, to varying degrees, we may be affected in terms of our sleep, the quality of our mood, our relationships. And I think a lot of the way I would approach this is kind of prevention and prophylactic kind of treatment. Just like I like to share the analogy of teaching people how to fish. Instead of giving them the fish, we can try to teach some of the techniques that we went over today, offer people resources. The page with the resources that Cassie talked about, I think, is a very, very good starting place. What we sometimes do is we just give people brochures or pamphlets and just say, here's some information if and when you want to try to use these. We can try to make brochures or make flyers or just direct people to the resources. We're lucky on my unit, I can just hand out a piece of paper and say, if you need help and you're ready, please consider using some of these resources, and they can kind of take the ball into their own court. I think Cassie probably also has quite a bit to say on this topic as well.
I always have quite a bit to say, JJ. You should know that. I like Dana's question. That is a fabulous question. And then Jennifer's as well. I think it's important that if you see some indicators like increased isolation, drop off, like Jennifer mentioned, or that somebody just seems to be carrying an increased amount of stress, there's no harm in saying, hey, something shifted. We're stressed out. I can tell that you're super stressed out. What's going on? Open-ended questions. How are you doing? I see that you're worried about this. Check in with them. And if you think suicide is a concern, ask them, are you considering suicide? Whenever people lose their employment, whenever people lose their connectedness, this is something that is sometimes considered. I care about you. Are you considering suicide? And then shut up and let them answer. You get a yes and it's the scariest thing, and you may poop your pants a little bit, and that's fine. But that means they trusted you with a yes, and you can refer them to resources that can help them build skills and tools they need to develop that resilience and hopefully get through the crisis. For the school members that I'm seeing out there, it could be a phone call or an email directly to the student. It could be a list of resources that you send out to the parents and then to the students as well, because sometimes it doesn't filter down to the children directly. I have a 16-year-old son, and he just hit this week after being out of school for a month. He says, I really miss school. And I said, you miss doing the homework? And he said, hell no, Mom, I don't miss the homework. I miss talking to the kids in between, and that's normal. And so outside of his Xbox world, I said, what can you do to build in some social time with your friends that you have? Have you set up a Zoom thing? Are you guys doing a Snapchat filter contest? It's beyond me, but check in, give people ideas, support them to that transition for that connectedness. The biggest thing that I see right now harming people in Wyoming is loss of employment, because not only are like the food service industry jobs disappearing, but the oil field and coal is being rapidly impacted by things, you know, like just throw that paper airplane out the window and hope the message is read, you know, like let people know that you're a safe place to have that conversation, or at least to start the conversation, and get some resources in your hand to hand off, like JJ said, for when people need a little bit more support than what you're able to provide.
I can just add one little anecdote for my own personal life too. Right when all of this kind of started, before shelter in place is not a thing, but even, you know, self-isolation was kind of a norm. My husband and I were staying home at our house in Sheridan, and that's not something we do very often. We're often out adventuring and moving, and our neighbor who's retired, he and his wife are quite a bit older and retired, and they noticed that our car didn't move for 3 days. And since we moved here in June, they had never seen our cars not move for 3 days. And so he literally like hunted me down on Facebook and found me and sent a message. And he said, it's none of my business and you don't need to answer if you don't want to, but I want to see if you're okay, or if there's anything I can do to help you. If, you know, I noticed this change. And I was amazed. It didn't feel creepy at all. And maybe it should have, I don't know. But it felt like someone looking after me or watching my patterns and noticing there had been a change. And I think in Wyoming, we do have this, you know, sort of live and let be value system that's like, well, they'll reach out if they need help, or we'll provide generic help, but we won't like hunt someone down to check on them. And I will just say, on being on the receiving end of it, it actually felt very endearing that to know that somebody was watching my patterns and had noticed that they had changed. And so I think we probably have more space to do that sort of thing than we think we do. So yeah.
I'm a big fan of hunting people down. I'm a big fan. And I think it, for some folks, it reinforces that they matter and that their existence is important. And even just that verbal, hey, I know it's not my business, but I noticed this, are you okay, is enough to kind of bolster them into being more well. Another thing, we had a question if to share the PowerPoints. JJ and I are both good on that. I really encourage you to check in with your local community prevention specialist. Every county has a version of community prevention. They know what's in your local areas, mental health wise, substance wise, and other resources that they can tune you into locally or help you get training for your companies, industries, whatever, to help recognize potential signs of suicide crisis and things like that, and teach you more directly how to navigate it. And QPR Institute, whom I'm a master trainer with, has given approval for virtual trainings, which they've never done before. So that's really something right now that may be utilized to help people be able to learn how to identify and how to ask the question and refer someone to help.
Awesome. And then the last thing, I'll put in a Leadership Wyoming plug for virtual social hour, back to the tip on having drinks and having fun. We've done it with 4 classes. We have another one tonight that Catherine helped to coordinate. It's something that most people don't do when life is normal. And so it feels like this special treat to get to see your class and engage with them. Besides the current class, they get to see each other a lot. Which has been wonderful. But if that's something you want to do with your own Leadership Wyoming class, let me know. I'm happy to help facilitate it. I think it is a nice way to get a perk out of life, that people are sort of have time and are at home and are willing to engage in this different way, instead of just feeling like everything's canceled and, you know, not available. So yes, we will send out the slides and also the video link. Who knows what it'll look like based on the like 75 video configurations we used, but I guess we'll find out. And yeah, I think I'll put Cassie and JJ's information in the email as well, and you can follow up with either one of them. They are both honored and an accessory. Good, some good banter. And I like the 2 speakers added the banter to the chat window. Come on, people. We'll send out these resources, and I think do keep checking on each other and checking in. And if you have things that you think are creative approaches or new ways to engage with your employees that you want to share, let us know, and we'll absolutely share it with this network and maybe even with the broader Leadership Wyoming alumni network, because I think people are all hoping to be in this together and learn from each other. So don't hesitate if you have an idea or something you think was effective, and you want to get it out to other people. So I'm going to unmute everyone. We'll do a ruckus round of applause. You can all make as much noise as you want. JJ, Cassie, woohoo! Thank you guys for joining us. Yeah, and thank you all. And we'll keep this on for another 5 or 10 minutes. Nice, Lindy's got a clap. I will stop the recording.